Hi everyone. It's just that when I started writing about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, I realized that there were so many layers to it, and so much to understand. So, let's dive into it. What's happening on the Russia-Ukraine border? Vladimir Putin has sent a large Russian military very close to the Ukrainian border, and seems ready to invade Ukraine. If this does happen, it could lead to thousands of deaths. Ukrainians will begin fleeing the country, causing a refugee crisis in Europe. Big countries like US will impose economic sanctions on Russia, which will cause damage to the global economy. How did it all start? It all started with the development of NATO after the Second World War. NATO was started by the United States, Canada and several Western European countries to protect each other from any act of aggression from a then super mighty Soviet Union. Safe to say, Putin hates NATO. What happened after the Soviet Union collapsed? NATO expanded towards the east, making friends all across Eastern Europe. Countries which were once part of the Soviet Union, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Slovakia, Romania, were now joining NATO. NATO, which was an alliance created to fight Russia, came closer and closer to Russia. They were right there at the border. In fact, NATO then also expressed desire to recruit Ukraine into their fold. How does Putin feel about this? Putin of course wasn't enjoying any of this. How would you feel if someone made you fight with all your friends, and then was playing with them loudly and shamelessly right under your nose next door? Putin feels the Soviet disintegration was the biggest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. He feels the Soviet breakup has made Russia weaker, and has since spent every single waking hour in rebuilding the country's clout in the world. He sees NATO's expansion towards Russia as a threat to his country. More importantly, he has a soft spot for Ukraine. He genuinely feels that Ukraine is a part of Russia, given their strong cultural and historical ties. For him, the situation is like two brothers have separated. He has legit grief about this. He wants to bring Russia back to Ukraine. What does Russia want? Russia has two demands. 1. It wants a guarantee from the US that Ukraine will never join NATO. 2. It also wants NATO to remove their military presence in Eastern European countries which are part of NATO. What did US say to this? Niet, not happening. US straight up refused and responded with a threat of economic sanctions if Russia tried to act sneaky in Ukraine. What could these sanctions be? An export ban of various important items to Russia, financial sanctions on leading banks in Russia, prevent Russia from using SWIFT, which allows banks to make financial transactions globally, blocking Russia's access to the dollar, preventing the usage of the gas pipeline between Russia and Germany. More on this later. How pissed off will Russia be if this happens? Very. Russia has been preparing for this day by saving money like a middle-class Indian family, and has foreign reserves worth $560 billion. But this would mean Russia would retaliate too. First up, remember Iran's nuclear program? Russia has been helping the West in negotiation talks with them. They will not be bothered about this anymore. Russia is the second biggest oil exporter in the world. So, there are many more products that Russia could prevent the export of, which could have giant ramifications on the global economy. What about Europe? They don't want a repeat of WW2. They want peace in the region. Angela Merkel was a strong figure in the region when it came to diplomatic relations with Russia. She spoke Russian and had developed a good relationship with Putin. Her successor, however, isn't doing much. French President Emmanuel Macron met Putin last week on a very long table, but no diplomatic solution was reached. Europe also imports from Russia a lot. So if sanctions are imposed on Russia, EU would lose a lot more than USA. More importantly, it also depends on Russian gas supply. Understanding the role of gas, Russia supplies gas to Europe, A lot of these pipelines go via Ukraine. So Russia pays Ukraine a commission to allow them to do so. So Russia created the Nord Stream 2, NS2, bypassing all countries and delivering gas directly to Germany. The pipeline is built, but isn't operational yet. It is waiting for Germany regulatory approval. So, what happens if US prevents the NS2 from getting regulatory approval? Funnily enough, it won't matter to Russia. The only point of NS2 was to avoid going through Ukraine. If Ukraine anyway comes into the Russian fold, Putin does not need to worry about any commissions. Ironically, the only losers will be the Western countries, who rely heavily on Russia's gas. Hold on, won't the current oil supply to Europe get affected given Ukraine is in turmoil? Here's where it gets interesting. If Ukraine is unsettled, facing war and overall just destabilized, the NS2 pipeline becomes all the important for Western European countries. The NS2 will ensure continuous gas supply no matter what's happening in Ukraine. Could this entire situation be all about gas money, yet again? Is Putin just playing a game of chess to get the NS2 pipeline approved for once and for all? Is Ukraine caught in the middle? Unfortunately, they are. No country can join NATO without an unanimous approval from all member countries. Many countries are already opposed to Ukraine joining NATO. So basically, Ukraine is trying to be part of an alliance that won't accept it, while also annoying the mighty Russians who live next door, without any guarantee of protection from NATO if Russia invades. Caught in the middle, and how? Can USA prevent all of this from happening? Well, turns out they can. If they want to. All they need to do is just guarantee that Ukraine will never become a member of NATO. They need to give Putin the comfort of knowing that NATO troops will not be chilling right next door in Ukraine. It anyway is highly unlikely that Ukraine will ever become a NATO member. So why not just prevent this war from happening? Unless they want Russia to invade Ukraine. Conspiracy theorists around the world feel that it might be in USA's best interests if Russia went ahead with the invasion. They would get to impose strict sanctions on Russia, bringing the Russian economy to a halt. Further, the demand for weapons would increase and the military-industrial complex would make a lot of money. Can Putin just not take a U-turn and go back? Well, that's the hope. As I type this, I am reading news that Russia has issued a statement that they are pulling back some of its troops, but Western countries are asking for proof and haven't seen any on-ground activity to support this statement. Obviously, Russia has always denied that they are planning an invasion and have claimed that they are simply carrying out military drills. Thank you.